Hidden in our favorite TV shows is a world of secrets and strange symbolism. Secrets and symbolism that conspiracy theorists have spelled out for us. Girl Meets World is a 2014 American sitcom that premiered on Disney Channel as a sequel to Boy Meets World, which aired from 1993 to 2000. The show focuses on a young student, Riley Matthews, as she journeys through her school life accompanied by her best friend, Maya Hart, her mother, Topanga, her father, Corey, and her little brother, Augie. While the show itself mostly centers around Riley, the theories are more attracted to Maya. One theorist took to Reddit with the theory of Girl Meets World regarding this particular character. Maya Hart, despite not being the main character, took center stage and became a major part of the series. Based on the sequel, Maya is supposed to be the new version of Sean Hunter, who was one of Corey's friends in Boy Meets World. But he didn't dominate as much as Maya had in just the first few episodes. This led theorists to one incredible and plausible theory about the character. Throughout the series, we see how the unruly and defiant best friend seems to evade punishment and appears to gain the likeness of her teacher, Mr. Matthews, who's also Riley's father. The student met her teacher in a library, where he gave her a smartphone on the condition that she spy on her classmates. After this, Maya seems to get away with a whole lot of stuff, like setting off the fire alarm, walking out of class, and doing her homework. Fans posit that perhaps Corey's blind eyes because of his best friend, Sean. According to the theory, Sean is Maya's real father, who bailed at some point in her life, leaving the mother to work 2 jobs and extra hours to cover for him not being around. This also explains why Corey and Topanga have no issue with treating the young girl as their own daughter. The father is often characterized as someone who left, and as we know, Sean's nature is to take off. Further evidence for this idea can be found in Boy Meets World, where Sean harbors clear abandonment issues. It's rather common for parents to basically adopt their children's friends, but it may also be likely that they're adopting the friend's child as well. Adding to this are the similarities between the two characters. While it's known that Maya is the new version of this character, they do share a similar appearance. They have blonde hair, blue eyes, and even similar eyebrow shades. Sean also has no trouble accepting Maya and treating her as his own when he comes into the picture. An alternate theory places Harley as Maya's actual father. He's a recurring character in the first 2 seasons of the show as Janitor Harley. He's known for his bad boy attitude but has a good soul. He also has a bit of mischievousness bouncing around in his eyes. These personality traits remind us of Riley's best friend. Maya and Harley, though, form no relationship during the series, but this may have just been a cover-up to hide the fact that he could be the girl's father. This theory isn't as widely accepted because the two don't really have a lot in common aside from their defiant personalities. Jonathan Bravo plays the muscular protagonist of the Johnny Bravo children's cartoon series. This man's personality paints him as a narcissistic and dim-witted individual who lacks the ability to attract women despite his obviously handsome appearance and cool guy persona. All he wants in life is to get the girls, please his mama, and go on some adventures where he meets a variety of odd characters. Acting alongside Johnny are his mother, Bunny, Mama Bravo, Pops, Little Susie, and Carl. Our first theory here posits that Johnny isn't an adult man, but rather a kid with a very big imagination. John Solo, a YouTuber, spoke of this very theory. He alludes to the idea that this adult-looking man is really 8 years old and in 2nd grade. Support for this idea starts with the character's physical appearance. His buffed-up torso and gelled-up hair precisely looks like a man from a child's imagination. Also, other male figures in the show look nothing like him. They're just more proportionate with regular-sized limbs. Even the muscular characters take on a more realistic appearance. Matching up with this exaggerated figure is an intense personality. Everything that he does is fueled by pure childlike energy. Johnny's actions and behavior are exactly what a kid would think a cool adult man would be like. This also explains why women don't view him in a relationship-type way. In fact, they often viewed his actions as cute, as though he was a child. But when he does try to flirt with them, he often gets attacked by the women. This adds a hole to the theory because why would an adult attack a child? A solution to this could be that he's been pestering these older women for some time, resulting in a little slap on the wrist, which Johnny in turn exaggerates as a full-on assault in his imaginary world. This supposedly grown man often calls women mama, which is likely a hint to his young age. Adding credence to this theory is the fact that the man understands the basic idea of dating a woman, and often just wants to have one date with them, which is how children see relationships. He simply lacks an understanding of the full concept of relationships and how they work. The entire series is also only focusing on Johnny's perspective and how he sees things. In each episode, he also gives himself at least 5 compliments a day. This leads us to another theory, which is that this character isn't a child, but rather psychologically unstable. We view him as a narcissistic individual with an exaggerated body and personality, and this theory lends itself to the same idea that it's all happening in his imagination, except this time he really is an adult, but an unstable one. Fans believe that he's really just an ordinary guy who can't get the girls. Every impossible feat that he accomplishes is an exaggeration and a way of making himself feel better. He also succeeds in these aspects before munching down on a whole lot of pancakes at his mother's house. This suggests that he still lives with her. She still feeds him and looks after him, like one may expect from the stereotypical man who lives in his parents' basement. Every ability, from the pickup lines to the karate moves, is often better than the masses. All of these aspects have led to the conclusion that the Johnny Bravo series is just the imagination running wild. In 2009, one of the most watched American sitcoms was brought to TV screens. Modern Family gained a cult following right up until its end in 2020. It centers around the lives of 3 main families, including the Dunphy family, which consists of married couple Claire and Philip and their 3 children, Haley, Alex, and Lucas. Then we have the Pritchett's, which include Jason, the wealthiest of the group, and his wife Gloria, along with their children Manuel and Joe, as well as the bulldog Stella. Then we have the Tucker Pritchett family, consisting of Mitchell Pritchett, his longtime boyfriend Cameron Tucker, and their adoptive daughter Lillian. We then have a different series that ties into the fan theory regarding the 2 shows, Married with Children. This series came before Modern Family and was brought to the screen in 1987. It's a dark American sitcom series that follows the life of the once glorious high school football player, Al Bundy, and his obnoxious wife, Peggy. They have 2 children, including Kelly, who's attractive but a bit dim, and Bud, the wisecracking son. While both of these sitcoms have their very own handful of conspiracy theories, there's one that ties them together. One Reddit user and fan, American Pegasus, took to the fan theory subreddit with this strange idea. They believe that Modern Family is actually a sequel to Married with Children. The theorists suggest that we look at this from the view that the 1987 series is a narrative being told by unreliable narrators. Al from Married with Children is on his 2nd marriage in Modern Family, as the father, who's really named Jason. He has 2 children, Claire and Mitchell. Claire fits in with the description of Al's daughter, Kelly, with her blonde hair and attractiveness. Mitchell fits in with the idea of the wisecracking son, who's also awkward around women, just like Bud, except they're all grown up with families of their own. It's suggested that Kelly, who's actually Claire, doesn't want her daughters to make the same mistakes as she did when she was younger. Claire regularly alludes to the idea that she was wild and crazy as a kid, much like Al's daughter. Adding some plausibility to this theory is the fact that Jason Pritchett and Al Bundy are both played by the actor Ed O'Neill. Theorists also refer to the newspaper that Al has been reading, which also appears in the hands of Jason in Modern Family. In 2007, The Wizards of Waverly Place was brought to Disney Channel as an original series. It centers around the Russo family, which includes 3 young wizards in training. Alex plays as one of the main siblings with her older brother Justin and their younger brother Max. The 3 embark on various misadventures, find love, and fulfill their wizarding powers. Along with these 3 are their parents, Jerry and Teresa. Alex is often seen with either her best friend, Harper, or her love interest, Mason, who's a werewolf. Justin also takes to a supernatural being, Juliet Van Heusen, a vampire. A subreddit dedicated to the show held a curious post about Wizards of Waverly Place, which they suggested exists in the same universe as Harry Potter. The Reddit user Fruits and Frogs reveals that they had drawn some comparisons between the movie franchise and the series. Evidence for this theory can be found in the Wiz Tech episodes. While these episodes are known to be making fun of the Harry Potter universe, Alex does hint at the existence of Harry Potter. At one point, she makes a comment about Justin's glasses and his whiz tech robe by saying those glasses and that robe remind me of someone. Alex is obviously alluding to Harry here, but her choice of words indicates that this someone is a real person. It would also be just like this character to forget the name of the legendary wizard. It suggested that the Wizards of Waverly Place is an alternate universe of Harry Potter, in which Voldemort actually wins. The wizarding world in the series seems dark, which only begins to happen later on in the Wiz Tech episodes. Evidence for the theory becomes apparent, specifically in the episode with Tudor. Here we find leprechauns being kept in cages so that they can be gawked at, and elves who've been named based on the jobs they'll have. In another episode where Kelbo transforms into Shakira, we find out that if there's a breach in magic, the offender will have their hands broken by the council. As we know from Harry Potter, misuse of magic is punished by the Ministry of Magic, but breaking hands is a bit far. That seems like something only the Dark Lord would do, or even one of his supporters, like Dolores Umbridge. Theorists believe that the Wizards of Waverly Place is actually a Harry Potter universe under the control of he who shall not be named. Evidence for this lies in the main character herself. Some have pointed out that Alex exhibits a similar nature to that of Tom Riddle. She uses her powers for dark magic and self-gain, yet still ends up becoming the hero. It's also been posited that Voldemort is not only controlling the wizarding world, but also guiding Alex, maybe even recruiting her as one of his followers. Adding even more credence to the theory is that in the series, wizards cannot marry non-magic people, which is why Jerry gave up his powers. This idea is a prominent aspect of Harry Potter's darker wizards and their views on the Muggles. The series directly contradicts everything that Harry had fought for. There also appears to be a strange resemblance between Professor Crumbs and Professor Dumbledore, with both of the characters sporting a long white beard in various forms of headwear. Both of these individuals are also the headmasters of their schools. Crumbs' wand design is also strangely similar to that of the Elder Wand. The X-Files is an American sci-fi drama TV series that aired on Fox Network in 1993 and ran for 9 seasons until 2002. It follows Fox Mulder and Dana Scully, who are 2 FBI special agents investigating some unsolved cases that involve the paranormal. These cases are labeled as the X-Files. Mulder is a believer in the existence of extraterrestrial life forms and is on a mission to find his sister after her sudden enigmatic disappearance. Scully has a medical background and is a skeptic who's assigned to analyze her partner's discoveries and debunk the work by offering up some sort of scientific explanation. The show itself is based on various conspiracy theories, including government syndicates, cloning, super soldiers, and hybrid beings. The first theory about this show suggests that it isn't really based on a fictional premise at all. The series is rife with theories, but this is the craziest one ever to be made. The show, according to fans, is merely a reflection on some very real secrets that are being kept from the public today, some of which have only recently been revealed. Another theory about this conspiracy theory-based drama is that Scully is actually immortal. Fans refer back to a key moment from Clyde Bruckman's final response, in which this character, who has psychic abilities, tells her that she'll be meeting her demise. Another interesting piece of evidence can be found in Scully's tattoo. The tattoo is of the Ouroboros, a symbol illustrating a constant cycle of life, an unending circle. Additionally, in a season 6 episode titled Tithonus, she was instructed by the 149-year-old Felix to look away when the Grim Reaper appears to her. She does precisely this and ends up living. Then, just a couple of episodes later, Scully was in a bank that detonates, but time keeps resetting itself. This serves as a piece of evidence suggesting that due to her immortality, every time the character meets her demise, time resets because the world cannot be without an immortal individual. Another theory refers to the smoking man, who's always seen smoking non-stop throughout the entirety of the show, but never seems to become ill or meet his end. One Reddit user, Anabasto, believes that his unnatural vitality and health have something to do with alien technology. In an episode titled Providence, we learn that there's an alien artifact that can completely heal those who come into contact with it. At one point in the show, this character had a rocket fired at him, and the theorists believe that this may have been holding this very artifact at that time, which is why he didn't meet his end, and why he can smoke as much as he does. But during season 7, something strange happens. The man's health begins to decline. According to Negative Ghostwriter 03, the smoking man may have turned himself into an alien-human hybrid in this season, but suffered some terrible side effects because of it. They explain that perhaps he had an experimental operation done. This operation entailed the transference of alien DNA from Mulder's brain into his own. He also mentions that his declining health was a side effect of cerebral inflammation. In the episodes that follow, the smoking man begins to get more and more ill and even becomes wheelchair-bound. We don't see the character again until a few seasons later, and he's perfectly fine. This means that the experimental surgery actually worked. Victorious is an American sitcom that aired on Nickelodeon. It centers around an aspiring singer named Tori Vega, who's accepted into a performing arts high school. Here, she regularly gets sucked into some wacky situations with the rest of the students. She was accepted into the school after having to fill in for her older sister, Trina. A few conspiracy theories regarding the characters have popped up about this show. The first set of theories is similar to that of the Winnie the Pooh characters, who are the representations of various psychological disorders. It begins with our main protagonist. Fans theorize that Tori is a perfectionist who's been diagnosed with OCD since everything has to be done her way. Theorists find evidence for this in the way that she stresses out over everything in every episode. They've also diagnosed Kat with a split personality. She regularly becomes defensive and extremely sad, with additional bursts of happiness. Jade has also been accredited with some mood disorders based on how she lashes out, her irritability, and her mood swings. Trina's personality seems to meet the criteria for someone with a narcissistic personality disorder. Despite not having a very good voice, Trina believes she deserves fame and fortune. As for Beck, the calm, well-natured student, theorists believe that he's under the influence of narcotics on a regular basis. However, one of the most prominent and deeper theories revolves around the protagonist. It's called the Victorious theory. Here, fans explain that she isn't actually a big star at Hollywood Arts. It's been suggested that Tori and her sister were neglected by their parents, which leads her to spend her days daydreaming. According to the theory, Trina, in Tori's imagination, is older than she is in real life. She also dreamt up better versions of her parents. The school that she and her imaginary friends attend is based on Juilliard, which is the protagonist's dream school. Adding to this is the idea that every person she meets at this imaginary school is based on her. Beck is really just her passive side, created from trauma. Jade is the angry side, and the part of Tori that dislikes everyone and everything. Robbie represents the socially awkward aspect. He indicates that she's unable to make friends, which is why a toy is needed to keep her company. That toy is Robbie's doll, Rex. His role is to be there for Tori to speak to, otherwise she would have no one. Andre illustrates her laid-back musical side, an imaginary part of her who has many friends and musical success. Kat is the representation of Tori's pure innocence, while Sikowitz, one of the professors at the school, depicts the unstable side and the part of her that doesn't really care about what happens. And every other person who comes into the show is merely just there to sit and agree. She made them up so that it wouldn't be just her and her imaginary friends, but a fully functioning school. Victorious, according to this theory, is purely fictional. Everything is happening in the protagonist's mind. Every issue she's faced with stems from stories that she reads or something that's taken place in her life, which is why the group faces no consequences for anything they do. Her love interests, like Ryder, are based off of her crushes at her real school. This may explain why Robbie tries so hard to change himself to be more like him. It would allow Tori to feel closer to her crush, who doesn't even know she's there. In reality, she's actually a 12-year-old student living in a never-ending daydream. From 1997 until 2001, an animated comedy called Recess aired on Disney's One Saturday Morning blog. It follows the lives of 6 elementary school students and their teachers. It features how the children in their society compete with class and government structure against the backdrop of an ordinary school. The gang includes the leader, TJ Detweiler, as the protagonist and his neighbor, a tough girl, Ashley Spinelli. Gretchen Grundler comes in as the brains of the group and is one of the smartest main kids in the series. Vince LaSalle plays the athletic part of the group and is the most sarcastic member. Gus Griswold serves as a contrast to this as the nicest friend and the newest member of the gang. And then we have the most sensitive member and the best 4th grade poet, Mikey Blumberg. One of the first theories is a strange one. It states that the children are actually the reincarnations of Robin Hood and his merry men. Think about it, they say. This is a group of fire-forged pals who seem to be resisting the tyranny of authority. They also stand up for those who are being oppressed. Based on the modern version of Robin Hood, it would appear that TJ fits well with the characteristics of Robin, a charismatic hero who has a strong sense of justice. Spinelli plays the part of the spunky action girl, Maid Marian, and Mikey, the gentle giant, is Little John. The awkward newcomer Gus depicts Much as the psychic. Gretchen, according to this idea, is Jack, the resident scientist and a brainy girl. Vince may be one of the 2 Robin Hood-inspired characters, either the quiet Will Scarlet or the snarky Alan. Going beyond the realm of just these 6 children, Principal Prickly may in fact be the distant evil overlord Prince John. Miss Finster fits in with the sheriff persona, which makes Randall, Guy of Gisborne, the sheriff's lackey. Reddit user The Original Gronky posts an alternate theory. The theory is that the characters from Recess are a prequel to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, in which each of the kids are all grown up. TJ, according to the fan, is Jake Peralta. Gretchen turned into Amy Sanchez. Spinelli is Rose Diaz. Vince became Terry Jeffords. Gus grew up to be Charles Boyle, and Mikey became Scully, and even has the beautiful voice to prove it. The theorists suggest that there are a few more characters in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but the majority of the crew may be the original Recess kids who grew up and changed their names, possibly due to some sort of witness protection program. They never split ways and ended up fighting crime together. An even darker theory, though, paints the gang as ghosts that are haunting the school. This idea states that the school had been established between 1919 and 1935 and closed in 2000 because of all the ghosts. Theorists posit that TJ was accidentally knocked by an ice cream truck. Vince suffered a career-ending injury and was placed in an asylum near the school. After passing away, his spirit regressed to childhood and set up base at the school. Spinelli succumbed to injuries during a fistfight, becoming the ghostly bodyguard of the crew to fend off the other spirits that came to rest there. Gus was always being bullied, and eventually this led to his demise. Mikey went into a diabetic coma, and Gretchen's life saw its end after Becky Benson stole her project and the science award. This theory, though, doesn't speak of any teachers, so it's uncertain if they too are ghosts or just figments of the gang's imagination. Dog with a Blog was a 2012 American sitcom that premiered on Disney Channel. The show follows the lives of the talking dog, Stan, and the new step-siblings, Avery and Tyler, and their little sister, Chloe. Stan is a smart hound, and the show is based on his perspective. He often helps the children navigate through their sibling situations, and becomes the tie that binds the whole family. Stan speaks in a very human way, but still exhibits dog-like nature, such as barking at the mailman, chasing his tail, and approaching the new poodles on the block. Our first theory here states that Stan isn't actually a dog at all, but is rather a Dalmatian, who'd been rocketed away from his planet as a child. This may explain why he's so interested in consuming cats, and why he's able to write or type, which isn't really a dog-like trait. Dalmatians are a species of short-stature sapiens. They have a long lifespan and are immune to infectious diseases. But a flaw in this theory is that Stan walks on 4 legs instead of 2, like the Dalmatians do. Theorists attribute this idea that he may be a subspecies that never achieved the bipedal status, or wasn't taught to walk, given that he wasn't raised with his own species. Another theorist and fan of the show posited the idea that Stan is actually a human that was turned into a dog. They attribute this to clues that can be found in episodes where he refers to being turned into a dog, but then quickly changes his position and plays it off as a joke. Not all theories, though, relate directly to the talking dog, but also to the kids. Fans suggest that Tyler and Chloe were actually adopted, and that Avery was something of a science experiment or a test tube baby. Neither Chloe nor Tyler ever mention their biological mother, and are quick to call Ellen Mom. Avery was also quick to start referring to Bennett as Dad. The brother and sister look absolutely nothing alike. One has vibrant red hair, while the other is a brunette. Neither of these traits is present in Bennett either. Bennett also plays the part of a child psychologist and would seem like the type to adopt children, while Ellen seems to be the one who would opt for a test tube baby. She also never refers to her ex-husband, the supposed father, as Avery. Arrested Development is a quirky and groundbreaking sitcom that aired from 2003 until 2006 on Fox. But after its cancellation, the show developed a cult following, which led to another 2 seasons in 2013 and 2019. It follows the dysfunctional lives of the Bluth family, centering around Michael Bluth, who tries everything he can to keep the family and the family business from collapsing. This effort came after his father, George Sr., was sent to prison for embezzlement. Michael aids his family in their adjustment from riches to rags. He helps his mother, Lucille, keep up appearances, as does his sister, Lindsay, and brother-in-law, Tobias, who are struggling with their failing marriage. He also guides their daughter, Maybe, and his child, George Michael, through adolescence. Michael has additionally been tasked with helping his adoptive brother, Buster, and the aspiring magician, Job, adjust to work life. Arrested Development gained the title of the goofiest sitcom ever, but if viewers look closer, they'll see various hidden aspects. Our trail of conspiracy theory begins with Buster, the adopted sibling. He's nearing his 40s but still lives with Lucille and acts like a young child. This is what led to this particular idea that one Reddit user posited. He suggests that Buster only has half a brain. He starts with the 10th episode in the first season, titled Peer Pressure. In this episode, we see the character pulling out his medical binder, which we can only assume is related to other studies that he may have been taking part in. During this scene, we observe a binder that's been labeled hemispherectomy surgery. This is a rare procedure where half of the cerebral hemisphere is either removed or disabled. This may explain why the adult man needs constant supervision, and the repeated references to one of his hands before he loses it. One risk involved includes vision issues, which explains his need for glasses. This fan also pointed out that the risks associated with a functional hemispherectomy are delayed, or arrested, development. Now, if you thought that one was far-fetched, Dr. Steve's Magic Drink, another Reddit user, suggested that Tobias is actually somewhat of a genius. The theorist explains that at the start of the series, Tobias was a psychiatrist who'd earned his degree through a prestigious college called Penn. He was moderately successful in this career before losing his license to practice after performing unnecessary CPR. Even though he made this error, he was still intelligent enough to have been able to graduate with a PhD. After realizing that his marriage was in ruins and his career was over, Tobias reevaluated his life. He knew that he wouldn't need to earn a living to support his family, since the Bluths were so wealthy. So he made use of his skills to study the family instead and started acting more like them, which forced them to underestimate him. Arrested Development fans, however, didn't stop with their incredibly odd theories there. According to yet another Reddit user, Mr. Taylor, the Bluths are actually the representations of Norse gods. This theory begins with Buster again. Mr. Taylor's friend had noticed the similarities between the character and the Norse god of Tyr. Tyr is considered the god of war, which ties into Buster's declaration, "I'm going to war." Additionally, this god also ended up losing his hand to Fenrir, and Buster lost his to a seal that had been given the taste of humans by his brother Job. It isn't difficult to see how Lindsay could be the representation of Freya. Both have golden hair and beauty. This would make George Sr. Odin, who has a brother that stands in for him from time to time when he has to leave. Lucille even resembles Frigga, Odin's wife, the keeper of the family secrets. Since Job is a magician trickster, this makes him the stand-in for Loki, leaving Michael as Thor. An additional aspect of this theory refers to the stair car. This is a car with stairs attached to its roof, and the Bluths are always driving it around. Theorists posit that the stair car is the Rainbow Road. As for Maybe and George Michael, another fan referred to the Valsung saga, the twins, Sigmund and Siglind, who were separated during childhood and ended up finding each other later on. The two ended up marrying and having a son named Siegfried. The trail of events reminds us of the relationship that the two cousins also share. And then we have Ryan Desmond, who posits that George Sr. is really George Michael's biological father. American Dragon Jake Long was an animated TV series that aired on Disney Channel and Disney XD. The show is set in Manhattan and follows the life of Jake Long. Jake is a descendant of a long line of people who can shapeshift into dragons. It becomes his duty to protect the community of magical entities that are secretly living among the New York City residents. The character was living with his parents, a normal father, Jonathan, his mother, Susan, and his younger sister, Haley. Other characters include his grandfather, who's also a dragon shapeshifter, and a 600-year-old Shar-Pei named Fu Dog. Many of the theories center around one main aspect of the show, the villain known as the Dark Dragon. One theorist suggested that this entity is actually Jake's father, the supposedly normal human. According to this idea, the Dark Dragon and Jake's dragon persona look very similar, which is possibly an intentional feature. Both Jake and the villain have the same shaped wings and spikes traveling down their spines. These spikes also end at the same spot on both dragons. The grandfather's dragon persona, however, has spikes that end a lot further down, and he doesn't have wings like his grandson and the Dark Dragon. These two characters also never share a scene. In one of the episodes with the Jersey Devil, there's a period during which Jonathan disappears, supposedly after being attacked by the beast. But he later turns up unharmed, suggesting that he'd been hiding away, but the camping area had been destroyed as though there was a struggle of sorts. He's also portrayed as a comedic relief character, the complete opposite of the villainous dragon. There could be two reasons for this. Either the father is unaware that it's the Dark Dragon, or it's a secret title that gets passed from father to son, which conjures up another theory. The Dark Dragon that the grandfather faced may have really been Jake's other grandfather on his father's side of the family. Adding credence to this theory is that Jake never wants to end his enemy, but rather tries to get him on his side. This is because he doesn't want to end his own father's life, according to this theorist. It's also suggested that the Hunts clan had eradicated Jonathan's family, which is why he dislikes humans and believes that only magical creatures should be allowed in the world. Futurama is considered by many people to be one of the greatest sci-fi cartoon series ever created. Produced by the same people who created The Simpsons, it centers around a man, Philip J. Fry, who gets frozen on New Year's Eve of 1999, only to wake up 1,000 years later to a world that he no longer recognizes. The first friend that he makes is a robot named Bender, and as the series continues, they become inseparable. But while Fry does his best to adjust to his new surroundings, Bender is more focused on committing crimes, breaking all the rules, and drinking as much alcohol as he can get his hands on. But there's a theory that Bender wasn't always this way. During the show's pilot, which was aired for the first time in March of 1999, Fry is pursued by Leela, a female Cyclops, who intends to implant him with a chip that will label him as a delivery boy for the rest of his life. Unwilling to accept his fate, Fry flees with Bender by his side, but they soon become cornered, and the only way out is for Bender to bend the bars in front of a window. Fry suggests this plan, but Bender informs him that he's only able to bend girders, since this is what he was programmed to do. As he walks away, he accidentally breaks a light bulb hanging above his head, resulting in an electric shock. As soon as he recovers a few moments later, he immediately agrees with Fry's plan and they manage to escape. Some fans of the show have suggested that this is the very moment when Bender becomes the misbehaving character that we've all gotten to know so well, and that if this hadn't happened, he would likely have been a much more easygoing character. But then, as the series entered its 4th season, Bender had yet another personality shift. Fans think that this may be the result of an event that takes place during an episode called Love and Rocket, in which Bender starts dating the Planet Express crew's spaceship. At one point, he ends the relationship, sending the ship into a self-destructive depression, and to save the crew, Bender merges his programming with that of the ship. The crew manages to make it out alive just by the skin of their teeth, but some fans believe that Bender felt the effects of this merging forever, as afterward he became more understanding and sensitive in subsequent episodes, though he still carried on with most of his beloved hijinks. In episodes to follow, Bender would often dress up as a female robot to disguise himself, but his conceited nature shone through even then, as he on one occasion disguised himself in this manner so that he could win the Women's Robot Olympics. One can only wonder what Bender would have been like if he'd not received that electric shock, and whether he would have been as lovable of a character as he turned out to be, had he not merged with the company's spaceship. Those who grew up in the 1990s will no doubt remember the iconic sitcom The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which starred a young Will Smith. It was his first big role as an actor, and thanks to the show's massive success, he would go on to have a very prosperous career in Hollywood. The show had a very memorable opening theme, in which Smith raps about how he ended up living in Bel-Air. He explains that he was living in West Philadelphia, where he and his friends spent most of their time on the playground, either relaxing or playing basketball. But on one occasion, he got into a physical altercation with some people who were causing trouble in his neighborhood. And when his mother found out about this, she became worried for his safety and decided to send him to Bel-Air to live with his wealthy aunt and uncle. He goes on to describe how he hailed a cab, which he describes as rare. And upon arriving in Bel-Air, he was stunned by how huge his relative's house was. And from there, he becomes the Prince of Bel-Air. He went on to become one of the most popular kids in his new school, and entertained audiences with his rebellious attitude, which is evidenced by the fact that he's the only student in his school who wears his uniform blazer inside out. This gives him a distinct sense of individuality, a trait that's seen by some of those around him as endearing, while some of the other characters find it to be rather annoying. But this does little to dampen his spirit. While the show hit the mark as far as humor was concerned, it also dealt with more serious issues, such as why Will's father abandoned him when he was still a child, one episode that most fans find particularly interesting. While Will quickly adapted to his new surroundings, he still on occasion mentioned that he missed his old stomping grounds, and in particular his mother, who was still living back in Philadelphia. But he would see her on occasion, as she often visited him in Bel-Air during holidays. But one fan theory has left people floored, as it suggests that all the events in the show took place in the afterlife. The theory centers on the show's opening theme. Rather than being an introduction to Will's new life, it's been suggested that while the altercation that prompted the move really did take place, Will never walked away and never moved to Bel-Air. Instead, he ended up in a coma fighting for his life. The lyrics explaining that his mother wanted him to move away are said to actually represent her acceptance that Will wasn't going to pull through, and that she had to let him go. The lyrics, quote, "I whistled for a cab, and when it came near, the license plate said fresh and it had dice in the mirror. If anything, I could say that this cab was rare, but I thought, forget it, yo homes to Bel-Air," is said to describe his final acceptance as he passed away. And the cab that takes him to Bel-Air is actually God guiding him to heaven. Not many people remember that Will had a fiancée, but after his move, he never spoke to her again. He also never gets married or has any children, which the theory suggests is because he's actually in the afterlife. Where the theory falls flat, though, is during a summer when Will returns to Philadelphia, and he once again comes face to face with the difficult life he lived there. While there, his nephew is born, which all but confirms that he never passed away, and continues to experience the different challenges that life throws before him. It's an interesting theory that makes a lot of sense up until a certain point, but most fans preferred to remember Will as the fun-loving young adult who became a household name during the 1990s. Fans of The Simpsons will be very familiar with the family's dynamic. Marge, the matriarch, serves as the voice of reason most of the time, though she does on occasion get involved with her own particular brand of hijinks. Maggie, the baby, is silent for almost all of the show's duration, and Lisa is seen as the smart one in the family. She's a vegetarian who has a love for music, which is evident from her saxophone playing, and she can often be seen taking part in one kind of activism or another. Then there's Bart, the fun-loving son who spends most of his time in school, wishing that he was outside riding his skateboard, or that he was at home in front of the TV, watching Itchy and Scratchy cartoons. He struggles academically, but doesn't often let this affect him. Lastly, Homer, the father, is seen as the dunce in the family. Although he works as a safety inspector at a nuclear power plant, he has no idea what any of the machines do, and more often than not, is dull-witted in nature, and it lands him in a lot of trouble. While some of the characters in the show are smarter than others, it would be a stretch to call any of them geniuses, since even the smartest of the bunch, a scientist named Professor Frink, manages to come across as a bit of a dunce since most of his inventions tend to fail catastrophically. But there is one theory that goes against this narrative. It suggests that all the members of The Simpsons are actually geniuses, and that they decided to hide this fact from the rest of the town of Springfield in order to keep their lives a little simpler. The theory suggests that the rest of the family became aware that Lisa, the smart one, never made any friends, and that she on occasion falls into a sort of depression while experiencing bouts of anxiety. Since they're all geniuses, they come up with a way to avoid this feeling by pretending to be just as dim-witted as the rest of the town, and no one ever seems to notice. In fact, one episode lends credence to this theory, as it shows Homer being a genius after a crayon, which was lodged in his brain for years, is removed. But as soon as this is done, his friends begin to realize just how much smarter he's become, and they begin to spend less and less time with him, proving that he would be miserable with a higher IQ. In another episode, we see Marge in her younger days, while she's still a student, and we realize that she's actually pretty smart. Added to this is the fact that she was a terrific painter at one point, but decided to give it up when she and Homer started a family. Bart is seen learning Spanish in the amount of time it takes the family to fly to Brazil. And while this may have been the wrong language, he certainly has an aptitude for learning different languages. While this remains just a theory, it fits in perfectly with the show's plot, and it's easy to see why it's become so popular, even if it is just for a bit of fun. The sitcom Frasier remains popular today, despite being aired for the last time in May of 2004. The main character, played by Kelsey Grammer, first appeared in the sitcom Cheers, but he then moved away from Boston to become a radio psychiatrist in Seattle. Here, he rekindles his relationship with his brother, Niles, and his father, Martin, or Marty. Martin eventually moves in with Frasier, since his mobility has been affected by an injury to his leg that he sustained while working as a police officer. To help speed up the process of his recovery, Frasier hires a physical therapist named Daphne, and soon the three are living together in Frasier's high-rise apartment. Niles eventually falls in love with Daphne amid his failing marriage, and as can be imagined, hilarity ensues. While Daphne does her best to assist Martin as much as possible, it soon becomes apparent that her skills as a physiotherapist are somewhat overrated. But Martin decides to keep her on. Most people believe he did this because of Niles' feelings for her, but a fan theory suggests an alternative motive. While there's no doubt that Daphne's stretching and exercise routines help Martin regain some of his mobility, it's been suggested that he refused to let her go because she understands him better than either of his sons do. And since his wife has long since passed away, she serves as a constant companion. When Martin moved in with Frasier, the two were constantly at loggerheads. But as the series developed, Daphne helped smooth over some of the rough areas in their relationship. And the theory further suggests that this helped Frasier become closer with his father, making her an indispensable part of the narrative. The same is true for the relationship between Frasier and his brother Niles. At first, the two bicker about the smallest things, but Daphne seems to provide them with a down-to-earth perspective on life, making both of their lives much simpler. But the theory goes on to suggest that she's also affected their individual lives positively. Before her arrival, Niles was often seen as miserable, but she seemingly turned this outlook on life around with her quirky ways and friendly nature. As for Frasier, she seems to take very little notice of his need for opulence, and before long, he begins to see that there's more to life than keeping up appearances. Though he still enjoys indulging in the finer things in life, such as caviar, foreign cheeses, and champagne. Throughout the show, Martin can be seen following the therapy routine that Daphne has designed for him. But on several occasions, we also see him moving much more freely than he's letting on, only to start limping again as soon as someone else enters the room. The theory posits that if Daphne hadn't remained in Frasier and Martin's lives for as long as she did, their relationship would have cracked under the strain of their different lifestyles, and they would have likely become estranged once more. Hence, to ensure that he can stay close to both his sons, he pretends to be far more affected by his injury than he really is, and in doing so, ensures that Daphne remains an integral part of their family. Bikini Atoll is a set of 23 islands located in the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Ocean. Between 1946 and 1958, the US government used the site to test 24 nuclear weapons. Some were detonated on the reefs beneath the ocean. Others were tested in the air, while others were detonated just beneath the water's surface. But to do this, people living in the area had to be asked to evacuate, and before the first test began, most of the family heads on the islands agreed. most of the island's residents temporarily moved to Rongerik Atoll and Kili Islands, but the US government had to provide them with aid since the living conditions in those areas were awful. They were told that as soon as the testing was over, they would be allowed to return to their homes on the islands, but sadly this wasn't to be. The nuclear tests that had been carried out resulted in massive amounts of radiation lingering in the area, and it remains there today, making it impossible for anyone to live there. The water had become impotable. The soil wouldn't allow for anything to grow. Fishing, which was a massive part of the inhabitants' lives, had now become too dangerous, and they wouldn't ever be able to farm there again. When tests were conducted at the site in 2016, radiation levels were found to be too high for anyone to live there, and the US government has been forced to pay out hundreds of millions of dollars in compensation and aid, since they're responsible for the residents' displacement of their homes. That same survey did, however, find that marine life around the islands is still abundant, and this has given rise to a fan theory regarding the popular children's cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants. The first hint that this theory may have some credibility is the name of the town in which SpongeBob and his friends live, Bikini Bottom. Here he works as a fry cook in the Krusty Krab restaurant, which is owned by the greedy Mr. Krabs. Krabs' enemy is a single plankton who attempts to steal the secret recipe for his burgers every chance he gets. There's also SpongeBob's dim-witted best friend, a starfish named Patrick, his neighbor, a snobbish cashier at the Krusty Krab, a squid named Squidward, and a squirrel named Sandy who hails from Texas. These are just a few of the very quirky characters that appear in the show, and a fan theory suggests that they got their strange character traits and behaviors as a result of the nuclear testing that was carried out in the area by the US government. While this may seem a bit far-fetched, some of the show's characters and other staff members have stated that they now believe the theory to be correct, and have even pointed out that some of the characters can sometimes be seen wearing clothing from that period. In an episode titled Dying for Pie, SpongeBob attempts to hand a pie to Squidward, but he trips over a rock, sending the pie flying through the air and into Squidward's face, where it then explodes. The footage then cuts to a live-action scene of an atomic explosion, lending even more truth to the strange theory that SpongeBob and his companions are living in radiation-infested waters. It's also been suggested that the nearby strange and desolate town of Rock Bottom has been left to rot as a nuclear wasteland, resulting in the strange language spoken by the characters that live there. Dexter's Laboratory was one of the most famous Cartoon Network series of the late 90s. During its run between April of 1996 and June of 1998, fans fell in love with his scientific antics and the show's sometimes sci-fi inspired nature, not to mention some of the strange characters that it introduced. Dexter, a boy genius, could be seen hard at work inside of his secret laboratory that he constructed under his family's home. But his parents remain blissfully unaware that he's conducting often dangerous experiments right beneath their noses, despite being baffled by their high energy bill. Only one other member of the family is aware of the existence of the lab, Dexter's sister, Dee Dee. She often inadvertently foils Dexter's plans thanks to her carefree and dim-witted nature, and on more than one occasion, she's responsible for an untold amount of damage that is usually created by her penchant for ballet dancing. But not many people know that Dexter wasn't always meant to be the main character of the show. When its creator was attempting to come up with a new concept for a cartoon, he drew Dee Dee first and only added Dexter as her brother as an afterthought. But when he and a few other artists got together, they decided that Dexter should become the focus of the show, with Dee Dee acting as a constant annoyance in his life, as well as the love interest of his archenemy, another boy genius named Mandark. And so the show continued to develop with Dexter showing his mental prowess in every episode, only to have Dee Dee interfere with his latest invention, equipment, or scientific discovery. But on several occasions, Dexter thinks a little too big and he ends up in trouble. Sometimes his reckless experiments put the entire planet in danger, and it's only thanks to Dee Dee's help that he's able to bring things back to normal. Because of this, a few fans have come up with the theory that the real star of the show is actually his sister, and that she's much smarter than she lets on. It's even been suggested that she's smarter than Dexter and she only pretends to be a dunce, so that she'll still be allowed into his lab to keep a close eye on him and his research. It's also been suggested that Dexter is the one lacking in mental capacity, since he often fails to realize just how dangerous his plans could be, and that he's endangering the lives of his family and sometimes everyone on Earth while trying to make a name for himself in the scientific community. The theory is further proven by the fact that he sometimes puts his own life in danger merely to address a slight annoyance. In one episode, he tires of constantly having to change his lab uniform and hence decides to laminate himself. Then there's the fact that Dexter does his best to keep Dee Dee out of his lab, but despite his elaborate locks and guardian robots, she still manages to find a way in with very little effort, sometimes appearing as if out of thin air, and much to Dexter's frustration. If Dexter really was as smart as he thought he was, it should have been easy for him to find a way to keep Dee Dee out, and hence many fans feel that she's simply allowing him to believe that he's the smarter of the two siblings, when she is actually the genius in the family. When it comes to naming the best and most loved sitcoms of all time, Seinfeld is almost always mentioned as one of the frontrunners. The show saw a massive amount of success during the 1990s, and before long, its main characters had become household names. There was Elaine, comedian Jerry Seinfeld's ex-girlfriend, who works as a copywriter's assistant at Pendant Publishing. George, Seinfeld's best friend, who's always looking for true love while attempting to remain employed for as long as possible. And the wacky Kramer, who lives across the hall and who's constantly eating food from Seinfeld's fridge after letting himself into his apartment. As the show developed, these four characters became inseparable, and they often ended up in hilariously awkward situations together, such as getting lost in a multi-story parking lot for an entire day when they're unable to remember where they parked. When they finally find their car later that evening, the engine won't start. While the show is filmed in several different locations, the most familiar is Jerry's apartment. It serves as a kind of headquarters for the main characters, and on occasion, for some of the supporting characters too. During the show's run, each of the characters go through several romantic relationships, which they end up discussing at Jerry's place. In fact, it seemed that they were dating someone new almost every week, and they were constantly in Jerry's apartment, allowing him very little time to himself. But one fan theory has now tried to explain this. It suggests that we as the viewers don't see everything that's going on in the characters' lives, and that there are certain gaps that need to be filled in by the show's audience. Keep in mind that Jerry is a stand-up comedian, and a very successful one at that. Hence, he needs to travel all over the country to earn money, which he has plenty of. While we often hear him talking about catching a taxi to the airport, or see him returning to his apartment with his luggage, this isn't an aspect of the show that's given much screen time. Hence, it's been suggested that his close friends are aware of his touring schedule, and that they don't see him nearly as much as we've been led to believe. When he returns from a tour, his friends are eager to see him, and the best way to do this is to meet him at his apartment. This also explains the strange fact that they're constantly dating new people. Since we don't get to see what happens to the characters while Jerry is away, we're often greeted by a new love interest that's entered the picture in the meantime. This also explains why they always have some tidbit of news to share, and why Jerry is often unaware of what's going on in his friends' lives until they tell him about their latest exploits that happened while he was away. Some fans have added that Jerry may simply have been the most accommodating apartment, or that they're constantly visiting him, since they don't have cell phones at the time. Even though Kramer lives in the same building, and hence should have a similar apartment, he's always over at Jerry's, either raiding the fridge or simply hanging out, sometimes on his own, suggesting that he prefers being there rather than at his own place. Even though it's just a theory, it's fun to think about, and it certainly does explain why Jerry's apartment is always a hub of activity. The hugely popular cartoon, Pinky and the Brain, aired its last episode in 1998, but since then it's become somewhat of a cult classic. Fans of the show first encountered the two lab mice in 1993 as characters of the Animaniacs cartoons, but they proved to be so popular that they received their own spin-off TV show. Brain was portrayed as a genius, while his sidekick, Pinky, seemed to know very little about anything, and on occasion ended up accidentally thwarting their plans to take over the world, an endeavor that they pursued in every single episode with varying amounts of success. In many of the episodes, Brain seemed to become irritated and even infuriated at Pinky's stupidity, but remained friends with him since he didn't have anyone else to help him with his quest for world domination. But try as he might, Brain and Pinky always ended up right back in the cage where they started their plan, only to start a new scheme again the next day. Brain often used elaborate pieces of technology to try and bend the world to his will, giving us the impression that he's some kind of genius lab mouse. But according to a theory about the show, this may not actually be the case. Some fans have suggested that Pinky is actually the brains behind the whole operation, and they've even provided proof of their claims. The theory started thanks to the show's opening theme song. The lyrics are Pinky and the Brain, one is genius, the other's insane. And we can instantly see which is which, as Brain is seen expertly and effortlessly picking the lock in their cage and working on mathematical problems, while Pinky dances around in a straitjacket. But since the song never explicitly states which of the mice is the genius and which is insane, some fans have suggested that this is actually the other way around. Since Brain's plans always fail, they theorize that he isn't as smart as he thinks he is. Added to this is the fact that his plans are often needlessly elaborate, and that his plans sometimes fail because of his own impatience or unwillingness to listen to his sidekick's advice. This, the theory holds, results in Brain becoming somewhat of a laughingstock in the eyes of the audience. Furthermore, Brain isn't the only one who creates plans to take over the world. Pinky has some very bright moments, such as acquiring the keys to every country in the world, which he then gifts to Brain for his birthday. With the means to take over within his hands, Brain then manages to spoil everything thanks to his rude nature, and soon the pair finds themselves back in their cage, ready to start concocting a new strategy. It's also been suggested that Pinky realizes just how smart he is, but decides to hide his intelligence from Brain so that he can focus on having a good time during their adventures, rather than becoming bogged down by their attempts to overthrow mankind. Since both mice were subjected to the same experiments that resulted in them being able to talk, there's no reason for Brain to be any smarter than Pinky, but Pinky seems to care less about attaining power, and instead relishes in the simple things in life, which seemingly pass Brain by without his knowledge. Westworld is a dystopian science fiction drama that graced our screens for 6 years from 2016 to 2022. It featured a massive park known as Westworld, where members of the public could live out several different adventures with the help of artificial life forms known as hosts. The hosts were created to be as lifelike as possible, and are touted by their creators as being virtually indistinguishable from normal human beings. They're programmed to play out whichever scenario they're placed in, but they're given a semblance of free will or improvisation to make the experience as realistic as possible. Since they know nothing of the world outside the park, the hosts can often be seen completely ignoring comments made by their guests about the outside world. They aren't even able to identify certain objects that have been brought into the park, and when asked about them, usually reply that the item doesn't look like anything. When one of the hosts malfunctions or something unexpected happens in the park, the hosts are told that they're merely dreaming. This happens often while maintenance is being done in the park, and ensures that they're able to maintain a sense of continuity among the hosts. While the experiences had by visitors to the park are all simulated, some fans have suggested that this may only be a small part of the actual simulation, which encompasses the rest of the outside world. While those who come to the park for recreational purposes are under the impression that they're stepping into a simulated world for the first time, it's possible that they've been living inside a much larger and more powerful simulation their entire lives, and that they themselves are simulated beings. In fact, some people have gone as far as to suggest that the show might be evidence that we're living in a simulated environment. While the theory that we may be living inside a computer simulation isn't a new one, the addition of the show to that theory is quite interesting. Rather than being artificial, programmed beings that continue to live our lives as normal every day, it posits that we may be part of a massive Westworld-style universe where we serve as entertainment to visitors. This would explain why we've been unable to explore space as easily as we would like, and why we still know so little about our universe, despite conducting centuries worth of research on the planets and stars around us. Furthermore, it would be very easy for our creators to hide the fact that we aren't actually alive. It would be as simple as adding the appropriate programming to our systems, and since we would have little to no free will, we would never feel the urge to find out whether we are, in fact, living, breathing beings. The theory suggests that Earth is a kind of amusement park that's been populated by humans. We go to work, raise our kids, play sports, watch television, and go about our everyday business, unaware that we're being watched by members of alien races who find our antics most amusing. It's said that this would explain sightings of extraterrestrial craft around the world, and the belief held by some that aliens walk among us. They may simply be on holiday and living out one of their own chosen adventures while appearing to us as human, since we're unable to recognize anything that isn't part of our simulated experience. This theory has gained a lot of popularity online, since it's akin to the simulated reality theory, and fans of Westworld have found it to be particularly intriguing. Avatar: The Last Airbender is a well-loved animated series that aired for the first time in 2005 and concluded with a television movie in 2008. Each of the 3 seasons is referred to as books, while each episode in that season is called a chapter. It tells the tale of 4 different nations living in a fantasy universe. Each nation has the ability to control one of the 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air, but they're at war with each other, each nation trying to establish dominion over the others. For the war to come to an end, an avatar needs to be born, and we meet this character in the form of a 12-year-old boy named Aang. He's able to control all 4 elements, but before he can do so, he needs to learn how to control fire, water, and earth, since his natural ability makes him an airbender. The series is set in a strange world filled with weird creatures and spectacular vistas. But some fans think that it may actually be set on Earth, only during a different time. Since the characters look exactly like humans, use fighting styles known to us, and encounter architecture very similar to ours, they believe it may be set in the far future. The theory suggests that most of the life forms on Earth have been wiped out by an apocalyptic event that not only erased our existence, but resulted in the characters of the show having no knowledge that we ever existed. If this mass extinction was caused by a nuclear event, it would also explain why the world is now filled with these strange animals that we've never encountered before, and why it has such a devastating global effect. The radiation left behind by this event may then have caused the new humans to develop strange abilities, which are evidenced by the bending powers that each of the nations possesses: air, fire, water, and earthbending. Others have suggested that the event didn't wipe out all life on Earth, but that a few humans somehow managed to survive. As the years passed, they lost all memory of the humans that used to live on the planet, and as radiation continued to affect the environment, animals underwent strange mutations, and humans started to develop powers that allowed them to manipulate the elements around them. Another theory states that humans were able to create powerful AI beings before they were destroyed, and that these are represented in the New World by the spirits that we see in the show. They consider themselves to be superior beings and look down on humans, since they remember the fact that we're responsible for our own demise. They also consider us as a threat, since there's always the chance that humans will fall back into their old habits, which is evidenced by the fact that there's already a global war going on at the start of the show. Some fans have gone as far as to theorize that the entire Avatar series is set in what we know as Asia, and that the Fire Nation represents Japan, while the Earth Nation is meant to be living in China. Thanks to the strange nature of this show, it's been the subject of many different fan theories, some of which make more sense than others. But what is certain is that it's a show that'll be remembered and rewatched for a very long time to come. When it comes to unidentified flying objects appearing in the sky, London isn't the first place to come to mind. But the city has had its fair share of strange aerial activity over the years, some of which are very recent. In one such incident that happened in Leighton, East London, a man named Dominique saw something in the sky that he couldn't identify, and he decided to grab his camera to get some footage of it. In the video, a strange blue light can be seen flowing through the cloudy sky above a city street, which is lined with parked cars. The light seems to be constantly changing shape, and at one point it looks as though it's joined by a few others, and Dominique can be heard saying, "That's so weird." Near the end of the footage, a series of smaller blue lights seem to spiral outward from the larger light in the middle. A few seconds later, they return, joining the larger light once more. The lights could be seen as far away as 2 miles, and many people who were lucky enough to witness the event were convinced that it was of extraterrestrial origin. But some people speculate that it may have been caused by the lights from a new stadium that had been built in the area. In another incident from September of 2017, Gary Lowe was on his way to pick up a takeout order when he spotted a strange object in the sky, and he stopped to film it. In this footage, a small circular object can be seen shining in the sky as it flies erratically overhead. At certain points in the video, it seems to blink in and out of existence while traveling at a high rate of speed, but then it seems to level out before streaking across the sky once more, becoming brighter as it passes by. The object then travels straight up into the sky before disappearing as if it were never there in the first place. Gary stated that he wasn't the only person who noticed the strange objects, as other witnesses also gathered to try to figure out what it could be. Theories on what it could be have ranged from a model aircraft to a possible drone to an alien spaceship, but none of these theories were ever confirmed, and it remains a mystery today. One baffling piece of footage from London was caught on live television during the broadcast of a women's soccer match in 2019. A presenter can be heard talking about upcoming matches while the players are warming up on the pitch, but unbeknownst to them, something's happening in the sky above the stadium. As the presenter continues to list dates of upcoming matches, a white light can be seen moving into view from the night sky above. It drops down at speed and then suddenly stops in mid-air, hovering in the sky a short distance away from the stadium. Strangely, it remains stationary for a few seconds, hovering soundlessly in the sky before it inexplicably blinks out and disappears. When the video footage was reviewed, it got even stranger. Just before the object comes into view, a bright flash that only lasts for a fraction of a second can be seen in the sky. A few seconds later, the light begins descending before it starts to hover above the city. Viewers who commented on the video, which has since been uploaded to YouTube, stated that they've seen similar objects in the skies over London in the past, some being seen hovering above Buckingham Palace and Big Ben. One man stated that his daughter managed to capture footage of a strange orb in the London skies just a week later, while a ufologist added that he saw an orange-colored object, similar in size in London in June of that year. None of the players on the field seemed to have noticed the object, and the presenter of the broadcast also seemed none the wiser. While the object was never officially identified, there have been a few theories suggested as to what it could be. While many people think it was an extraterrestrial craft, others believe it was a drone that flew over the stadium, or that it could have been caused by reflections from the stadium lights. None of these theories have been proven though, and for now, they remain mere speculation. It isn't very often that this type of event is captured on a live TV broadcast, and when they are, they largely go unnoticed, making this a rare piece of footage indeed. The Greenridge Cemetery, located in Saratoga County, New York, is rumored by many of the locals to be haunted, and numerous paranormal investigations have taken place on its grounds over the years. The cemetery officially opened in 1844, and today it serves as the final resting place of some of Saratoga's most well-known figures, some of whom lived very interesting lives and are still spoken about by those who live in the area. One such example is a man named Charles Dowd, who was known by locals as the father of railway time. He earned this moniker thanks to a proposition for a standardized time zone across North America, the first person to do so. Ironically, it's a train that caused Dowd's demise, as he was on his way home one night in 1904 after spending some time with a friend. The two had been drinking, and Dowd had become intoxicated, which is why he didn't notice an oncoming train as he crossed the tracks. Another prominent figure who's buried at the cemetery is Buddy Enzer, a thoroughbred jockey who made a name for himself while he was still in his teenage years. One of his most notable feats was when he won 5 races in just one day. He repeated this feat a year later, but his days as a jockey would quickly come to an end when he was dismissed from the jockey club due to alcohol abuse, which was the cause for some erratic behavior on his part. Enzer's achievements didn't follow him to the grave though, as he was inducted into the National Racing Museum and Hall of Fame, after which he passed away in 1947. The graves of George Sherman Batchelor and his wife Catherine can also be seen at the Greenridge Cemetery. Batchelor is known not only for commissioning the Batchelor Mansion, which is said to be haunted by his daughter, but also for being elected to the New York State Assembly when he was just 21 years old. Batchelor fought in the American Civil War and would eventually go on to become a judge who served on the International Tribunal in Egypt. Many people travel to the cemetery to visit these well-known graves, but on some occasions they find more than they bargained for, and one of these events was caught during a live TV broadcast. More specifically, it was during an early morning live broadcast from WNYT News Channel 13's reporter Sam Hessler that something strange happened, but luckily Sam didn't notice it at the time. It would only be made aware of the event when eagle-eyed viewers drew the channel's attention to it. Sam was doing a report on a Twilight tour that's offered by the Greenridge Cemetery, and in the footage, she talks about the different gravestones that can be seen behind her. She points to a few tombstones and then turns back to the camera a second before something can be seen moving in the background. Viewers who spotted the activity reported seeing a strange white figure moving past some of the gravestones, and when the footage is slowed down, it's easy to see why they were so freaked out. The figure, which moves quickly through the darkness, seems to be running from behind one of the gravestones, and it moves to the left of the screen, unbeknownst to the reporter or her camera operator. Some people who have viewed the clip since it was uploaded online stated that they can see the figure of a woman clothed in a white dress, and they're certain that this is the spirit of someone who's buried on the grounds. Others claim to see more than one spirit, while a few pointed out that there's a dark shadow present as well. Given the history of the Batchelor Mansion, which is located nearby, some people have speculated that the figure may be the spirit of Batchelor's daughter that was caught on camera. Other viewers were more skeptical though, stating it was likely a trick of the light, caused by the lighting on the camera operator's equipment. If nothing else, it certainly is a good piece of publicity for the cemetery's Twilight tour, and it may just cause even more visitors to flock to the area in hopes that they might see a ghost firsthand. The country of Brazil is no stranger to UFO activity, as many people have reported seeing strange lights and objects in the sky for decades, and many of these reports have gone unexplained. In July of 2012, the Telegraph newspaper uploaded a video to YouTube in which a man is filming a strange object between the clouds above Sao Paulo, and many people still hail this as the best UFO footage ever filmed. The man who filmed the video is not associated with the newspaper, but he stated that he grabbed his camera as soon as he spotted the weird object and couldn't believe what he was seeing in front of his own eyes. In the footage, the man is standing in a green field, and we can see a few white clouds overhead. He then zooms in on one of the clouds, and this is when it becomes apparent that there's something else in the sky that wasn't visible before. A disc-shaped object can be seen emerging from the clouds, as if it was hiding from sight at first, and it hovers next to the cloud, remaining perfectly still against the blue sky. It then moves back into the cloud cover before something truly unexpected happens. A blue light begins to emanate from the object before it starts to flash violently. The object then seemingly explodes in a flash of bright blue light, and two smaller lights can be seen falling from the cloud towards the tree line in the distance. Just 2 weeks later, another video was uploaded to YouTube in which a man interviewed two women, Lillian and Valkyra Silva, who claimed that they had an encounter with an alien being in January of 1996. They stated that at around 3 p.m. they were heading home, but decided to take an alternate route. As they made their way through a wooded area, they noticed a strange creature with 3 horns on its head and intense red eyes. They added that the creature looked like a very small person and that it seemed to be sweating profusely. As soon as they realized that they were looking at something otherworldly, they ran home as quickly as they could and have since stated that it was one of the worst experiences of their lives, as the people in their community believed that they'd fabricated the story and they lost many friends as a result. But one sighting that many people believe to be irrefutable, since it was caught on a live TV broadcast, occurred in February of 2021, while a presenter of a Brazilian TV show was in the process of delivering a weather update. The show in question is called Brasil Urgente, and usually it focuses on the day's most prominent news stories. But on this particular day, something happened that left not only the presenters, but their viewers astonished. While pointing out a large storm that was approaching Sao Paulo, the camera, which was inside a helicopter, can be seen panning from side to side, showing the dark weather system which looks a lot like a dangerous supercell storm. And it's obvious that a large amount of rain is falling in the distance. But as the camera points to a particularly dense part of the storm, a white disc-shaped object can be seen moving to the right of the screen at what seems to be an impossible speed. Luckily, the presenter, Jose Luis da Tena, was sharp enough to see the object, and he pointed it out to his colleagues and viewers. When the footage is slowed down and zoomed in, it becomes clear that this is not a plane or a bird, as it has a round shape, domed top, and seems to be silver in color. Furthermore, the speed at which the object is traveling is much faster than any bird or plane could manage, and when compared to the buildings beneath it, it's much larger than any plane would be. Some viewers decided to calculate the speed that the UFO was traveling at, and it was estimated to be flying at over 1,500 miles per hour, more than twice the speed of sound, which is not achievable by any of our aircraft. The object is only on screen for around 7 seconds, but in that time it crosses over most of the city before it disappears from sight to the left of the screen. While many people believed that this was indeed an extraterrestrial craft, others were more doubtful and thought that the object may have been closer to the camera than it seemed. The sighting has never been explained, and viewers are divided on what it was that was caught on camera that day. With no way to prove either theory, it's a mystery that may never be solved. There's a belief among some conspiracy theorists that we share our planet with a race of reptilian humanoids that secretly run every aspect of our lives, a theory that was first proposed by the author David Icke. In his book, The Biggest Secret, Icke proposes that these reptilians have been on Earth for thousands of years, and that they come from the same shared bloodline that originated on another planet in our solar system. In one public poll that was conducted in 2013, it was found that as many as 12 million American people believe that the country's politics are being controlled by these lizard people, with some believing that they also created a group called the Illuminati, which has its hand in most of the world's most important issues, from politics to the world's economic state. Many people believe that some of our most well-known celebrities are known for being members of the secret organization, with some naming Lindsay Lohan, Lady Gaga, and rapper Jay-Z as being involved with the group in one way or another. As for the lizard humanoids, they're said to have the ability to change shape whenever and wherever they want, and that some of the most famous politicians that have served in the past and present actually don't look anything like the figures we see on TV, but instead have scaly skin and reptilian eyes that can only be seen on rare occasions. Some people who claim to have been abducted by extraterrestrial beings have stated that their abductors appeared to be reptilian, and some theorists believe that they're the same creatures that are running nearly every aspect of our world. Ever since, many videos and photos have emerged online, claiming to provide evidence that certain celebrities and high-ranking officials are members of this reptilian race, often being shown with strange expressions on their faces, or with facial features that seem completely out of place. Some conspiracy theorists have gone as far as suggesting that these creatures have managed to breed with humans, resulting in a human-reptile hybrid race that can be easily presented to members of the public without arousing suspicion. One reporter named Philip Bump wrote an article in 2013 in which he compared the different conspiracies surrounding lizard people on our planet, and apparently there are a few features to look out for. He said that they're said to have green, hazel, or blue eyes that can change color at any moment. They're also prone to low blood pressure and can be identified by the numerous scars that they have on their bodies. Furthermore, they're very fond of everything and anything to do with space and science, since they originated on a planet other than our own. It's also been suggested that they can be caught in the act of shape-shifting by reviewing footage of political speeches. It's said that when this type of footage is slowed down, it's possible to see their eyes changing, or some of their facial features becoming distorted. One video that's been uploaded online claims to have captured one of these moments during a live TV broadcast. The broadcast in question is from a Spanish news station called TVE, and it focuses on a reporter who's covering an unknown event in the country. The man who uploaded the footage says that he recorded the event so that he could watch it later, but when he did so, he noticed something that he couldn't explain. In the footage, a male reporter who's covering the event is speaking directly to the camera, and according to the uploader, he believes that the broadcast is over at one point and he shapeshifts sooner than he was supposed to. As the reporter concludes his piece, he's still looking directly at the camera when he blinks, revealing a second set of eyes that appear below the first. The uploader slows the footage down at the exact moment and points out the extra set of eyes that seem to be located in between his eyelids. He adds that the whites of the reporter's eyes are bigger than they would be on a normal person. He then concludes that we have reptilian humanoids living among us, and many people who have viewed the footage agree. But others pointed out that the camera glitches can be seen in other areas in the video, most notably when a woman walks past in the background to the bottom left of the screen. As she passes by, a glitch trail follows her, and many viewers believe it's the same kind of artifact that occurs with the reporter's eyes. There are, however, many viewers who agree with the uploader, and they've stated that they take the footage as proof that we're being controlled by an advanced race of reptilians from another planet, as unlikely as that may sound. One of the areas on our planet that sees the most UFO activity is undoubtedly the United States, with the US National Intelligence Office reporting that more than 500 sightings have been reported by US troops alone, with more than 100 of those yet to be explained. Since so many sightings are reported each year, there are many videos that have been uploaded to the internet showing inexplicable objects in the sky. And while many of those turn out to be either airplanes, drones, or meteors, there are many more objects that remain unidentified. One such video that was filmed in New York left many people baffled, and it was even featured on a news broadcast the next day. The footage shows 3 bright circular objects in the sky, and at first they seem to be traveling close together. But as the footage rolls on, the 3 objects move away from each other, while hundreds of people look on from the streets below. Some people reported seeing up to 5 of the objects, and when the video was shown to officials, they stated that it was likely some kind of balloon, though many people disagree with that explanation. Another piece of footage that baffled viewers came from the KOCO5 news camera that was positioned at the Grand Casino Hotel and Resort in Oklahoma, and this time it seemingly went unnoticed by the presenters of the program. At around 6 a.m. on the 12th of March 2015, the show was in the process of starting their weather segment, and they cut to that particular camera to show the skies over the city of Shawnee when an object suddenly flew into view. The object enters the camera frame from the left and streaks across the night sky at what seems to be an unbelievable speed. But rather than fly up into the sky, it travels downwards towards the buildings in the distance before the footage ends. While many viewers believed it to be something extraterrestrial, others pointed out that it may have been an insect flying close to the camera, and that it only looked like it was disappearing into the distance, and this incident also hasn't been explained. Less than a year later, another strange object was caught on live TV by the WKBW TV news crew, while presenter Andy Parker, a meteorologist with the channel, was in the middle of his Skywatch 7 weather update. At the time, the channel was taking a closer look at the moon while it was setting, and they zoomed in as close as they could. Andy points out that the footage is clear enough to see the moon's craters, but then something appears on the screen that he struggles to explain. A dark disc-shaped object flies into view and crosses between the camera and the moon, leaving a trail behind it, and as soon as Andy notices it, he points it out to his fellow presenters. He speculates that it may be a plane passing by, but then jokingly states that it may have been a UFO. People who viewed the footage on YouTube speculated about the object, some stating that it seemed too large to be a plane, while others pointed out that it was moving much too fast and that it must have been an extraterrestrial craft. Andy would later post the video to Facebook, where he asked his followers for their theories on what it could be. One suggestion was that it may have been a firework, but he quickly dismissed that idea, stating that the object's trajectory proved that this wasn't the case. Another commenter speculated that it may have been an insect that flew close by the camera lens, but again, Andy rejected this theory, stating that it was much too far away and that insects don't tend to leave a light trail behind them. Other theories included suggestions that it may be a meteorite that passed between Earth and the Moon, explaining the light trail that was seen. And when one commenter proposed that it may have been the International Space Station, he was informed that while the station can be seen passing between the Moon and Earth, it does so in under a second, while this object was on screen for at least 8. There have also been suggestions that this was merely the shadow of a larger object that could not be seen since it was flying above the Moon, or that it may have been one of our satellites in front of the camera. But with no official explanation, there's no way of determining what the object was, resulting in a debate that's impossible to solve. It's part of human nature to try and make sense of everything we see around us, and when an event occurs that we don't understand, some people will immediately jump to the most outlandish conclusions. This is not only true about strange things that we see, but also things we hear that can easily be taken out of context and misconstrued to mean something completely different than what was intended. This seems to be the case with a very strange event that happened during the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II on the 19th of September 2022. The funeral was attended by 2,000 people, 500 of whom were foreign dignitaries and heads of state. Eagle-eyed viewers who watched the funeral while it was being broadcast on live TV spotted several unexpected events during the broadcast, the first of which was when a spider was seen sitting on the Queen's coffin, prompting some lighthearted viewers to comment that it was just hitching a ride. There was also an embarrassing moment when one mourner accidentally dropped their funeral program right next to the Queen's coffin. A well-known religious figure was in the process of rearranging the pages of his program when one page fell out and landed just a few feet from the coffin. Some viewers were also perplexed by an error made by two presenters who were pointing out celebrities and world leaders who were arriving to attend the funeral. When the then new UK Prime Minister, Liz Truss, arrived, they stated that she must be a minor royal since they didn't recognize her, but they were quickly corrected and told they were actually talking about the new leader of the UK. But these were by far the least interesting and strange events that happened that day, as many viewers were left shocked and confused by a whispering voice that could be heard over the commentary of Tom Bradby as the hearse was being driven to West London. Following an extended silence, Bradby could be heard saying, "As you can see," but he stops mid-sentence when an eerie woman's voice is unexpectedly heard whispering, quote, "that death is irreversible," and the fact that she's trapped, suggesting that he also heard the creepy voice. As is the way with the internet, many viewers immediately started posting to their social media accounts that something paranormal had happened during the funeral, and speculation immediately started to run riot. Some people suggested that an old interview with the late Princess Diana was being played and accidentally picked up by a microphone in the studio. But others had an even more outlandish theory that Diana was actually speaking from beyond the grave, since they were sure that a reporter would never say something like that during a live broadcast. Some people thought that the voice had been purposefully added to the broadcast and suggested that it was fake, but they were quickly corrected by viewers who pointed out that the broadcast could be re-watched on ITV and even provided the timestamp of when the creepy voice could be heard. The truth was far more mundane than the paranormal, even though ITV never officially gave an explanation of what happened. A grief counselor named Julia Samuel had been giving advice on how to deal with the passing of a loved one just 10 minutes earlier, and it's believed that it was her voice that could be heard on the studio's microphones. The incident had finally been explained, but many viewers continued to talk about how creeped out they were when they first heard the whisper, as they were certain that they were hearing something supernatural. From as early as 1952, television broadcaster CBS ran a panel game show called I've Got a Secret, in which selected members of the public were invited to share one of their secrets with the show's presenters, as well as the show's viewers, and it was then up to the panelists to ask questions and guess what the secret was while the show was being broadcast live. If the guest's secret wasn't discovered by the end of each segment, they could win a cash prize, after which the secret was revealed to everyone in attendance. One particular episode of the show is still spoken about today, as it featured a 95-year-old man named Samuel Seymour, who had a particularly interesting and terrifying tale to tell. As this particular segment of the show, which aired in 1956, started, the presenter escorted Samuel to his seat, after which he revealed his name and that he hails from Maryland. The presenter then revealed that they advised Samuel not to attend the broadcast since he had a fall in his hotel room, but Samuel decided that he wanted to attend since his doctor left it up to him to decide. He then whispers his secret into the host's ear, and text appears on the screen, revealing that he was present at Ford's Theater on the night that ex-President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth on the 14th of April, 1865, and that he saw the event unfold. The presenter then reveals to the panelists that Samuel's secret involves something that he witnessed, to which the first panelist asks, "Does it have historical significance?" to which he answers yes. The second question asked is whether the event had political significance, to which the answer is yes once again, of course. The panelist then works out that Samuel must have been born in 1860, and they ask him if it had anything to do with the Civil War, to which the answer is given indirectly. Seymour is then asked whether the event involved a famous person, to which he answers yes again. The first panelist fails to guess the secret after learning that the person in question held political office, and they move on to the next person to guess. The next panelist asks whether this person was ever the President of the United States, to which Samuel jokingly responds, "Oh, I think he once was." The panelist then correctly guesses that they're referring to Abraham Lincoln, and then asks if this event was something pleasant, to which Samuel replies, "Not very pleasant, I don't think. I was scared to death." The panelist then correctly guesses that Seymour witnessed Lincoln's assassination, drawing applause from those in attendance. Samuel detailed his experience during an interview with the Milwaukee Sentinel newspaper 2 years earlier in 1954, in which he stated he was just 5 years old when he accompanied his parents and his nurse, Sarah Cook, to Washington on a business trip that his father had to attend. Samuel, a woman named Mrs. Goldsboro, and Sarah decided to go to Ford's Theater that night to watch a play titled Our American Cousin. As soon as they were seated, they realized that they were seated across from the presidential box and that Lincoln was also in attendance. He recalled that at some point during the play, a shot rang out and he saw the president slump over in his seat, followed by a scream coming from the presidential box. That's when the chaos erupted in the theater, and he was convinced that a man, later identified as Booth, fell out of the box by accident. It would later come to light, of course, that Booth had actually jumped from the box and landed hard on the stage, breaking his leg in the process of escaping after carrying out the assassination. He instantly asked his nurse if they could go over to help the man who had been hurt, but Booth had already gotten up and was doing his best to make his way out of the theater before he could be caught. Sarah and Mrs. Goldsboro grabbed Samuel and made their way to the theater's exit among the hundreds of people who were now milling around, and as they exited, he recalled hearing people shouting that Lincoln had been shot and that his life had been ended. He also recalled having trouble sleeping that night as he kept dreaming about the incident, but in his dreams, he was the one who was fired at. He added that he often fell asleep in his rocker in his old age, and on some occasions, still dreams about that night. Booth would of course be tracked down and arrested 12 days later in a barn where he was hiding out, but this did little to ease Samuel's young mind, as the incident kept replaying itself in his mind, which is understandable at such a young age. Samuel would pass away just 2 months after making his appearance on the show, but it's well remembered by those who watched it at the time, and those who have seen the clip which has been posted to the internet. Live streaming to social media platforms such as Facebook is becoming increasingly popular, as streamers have the opportunity to interact with their followers in real time while they stream their favorite game, talk about sports, news or politics, or listen to new music that's been released by their favorite artists. Some of these streamers have millions of followers, many of whom log on to watch them live while they try to beat other players at a game or talk about issues that they deem to be relevant to their followers. But as with live TV broadcast, sometimes things don't go quite according to plan. When something unexpected happens, or when one of their viewers picks up on something sinister that should not be happening. A good example of this is when a Twitch streamer called Jenny went live as she traveled through Taiwan and wanted to share the experience with her followers. Jenny was attempting to walk across the whole of the country, but during one live stream on the 24th of April, 2023, things took a sinister turn. She noticed that the same man kept appearing behind her, and she started to believe that he was following her. The man was dressed in all black and had a hooded sweatshirt covering his head and face. At one point, she stops and points the camera directly at the man, and he quickly turns his back to her before hiding in the bushes next to the road that she was walking along. This went on for around 4 hours before police officers were able to confront the man and order him to stop what he was doing. But not all creepy events that occur during a live stream are as easy to explain as the incident that Jenny went through, as they're believed to be paranormal in nature and leave not only the streamer, but their viewers completely freaked out and without a plausible explanation. One such incident occurred in May of 2023 when a streamer known as Chris D was in the middle of a live podcast along with a few of his friends called J-Rob, Junebug, and Leaf respectively. In the short clip that's still available on social media sites all over the internet, they can be heard discussing the New York Knicks, a basketball team that competes in the NBA, when something very strange happens. Junebug can be heard talking about specific players, and that the team already has a few superstar players. He then mentions a specific player, suggesting that it might be time for him to be released from the team. Next, he names 2 of the players that he considers to be superstars, and suggests that the team should build itself up from those players. But he stops mid-sentence when he notices something weird and can be heard saying, "Is that a ghost?" When the footage is slowed down, it's clear to see that he's referring to something that he saw in Christie's stream while he was talking. Christie can also be seen looking over his shoulder, as he likely also spotted it on his monitor. Looking at the footage a little more closely, we can see what looks like a transparent figure moving from right to left of the screen in the room where Chris D is sitting. Though the room seems very dark, it's just possible to see the movement behind him, and immediately the group is left wondering what it was that they just saw. Junebug also spotted the strange movement and can be heard saying that wasn't even a person, but Chris D tells him to chill out. J-Rob then chimes in asking, "Did we just catch a ghost on stream?" And it seems that Leaf was the only one who didn't see what happened, as he was looking at something else at the time. A clip of the incident was uploaded to YouTube, and it's been viewed more than 10,000 times, with some commenters stating that it's the best paranormal footage they've ever seen. They point out that everyone's reactions seem genuine, and that it's unlikely that the incident was staged. Junebug later stated that he never believed in ghosts, but that he was now changing his mind after seeing the figure pass behind Chris D with his own eyes. But not everyone was convinced that this was a paranormal event. Some commenters believe it was one of Chris D's roommates who walked by, and since the room is so very dark, he only just showed up on camera. Others stated that it could be artifacting caused by the webcam that he was using, but the 3 streamers who witnessed at the time are convinced that they caught a ghost on camera, and they've made plans to see if they can capture any further strange events on camera in Chris D's house. People who enjoy watching sports often tune into live broadcasts of games as it gives them the opportunity to support their favorite teams when they're unable to attend the game in person, either because it's being played in another city or because they were unable to buy tickets before they were sold out. But sometimes, inexplicable events are captured by cameras that are covering the game, leaving fans scratching their heads as to what they witnessed on live TV. One often spoken about event occurred during a football match in Bolivia, and it garnered so much attention that it was shown again by news channels that speculated that a ghost was present in the stands. As the footage begins, one of the players on the pitch can be seen arguing with the referee about something before the footage switches to a camera with a wider angle. And this is when eagle-eyed viewers spotted the strange event in the distance. On the far side of the stadium, a section of the pavilion is almost empty, as only a few fans are seated in the area. About a third the way up the stands, a figure, which at first looks like a spectator, can be seen moving from left to right of the screen, which seems normal, except for the fact that he seems to be running at an incredible speed. As the footage continues, the figure picks up even more pace, and inexplicably runs through the rest of the crowd without missing a step, as if it's running through the obstacles in its way rather than around them. Incredibly, it continues running through a densely populated area of the stadium, but it doesn't slow down at all, prompting some viewers to speculate that this was a ghost that was present at the game for reasons unknown. Most people speculate that this was either a camera glitch or a shadow that was being cast from somewhere else. But to this day, there are many viewers who are adamant that this was the spirit of a departed person. Another incident that occurred on a football field happened in September of 2016 during a live broadcast of a show called Monday Night Football. Only this time, it happened on an empty field that served as a backdrop to a discussion being held by the two presenters, Jamie Carragher and Phil Neville, after a match between Sunderland and Everton. While Carragher is giving his thoughts on some well-known players, a groundsman can be seen on the field in the distance, and it seems like he's pushing a lawnmower. He comes into view from the right of the screen, and as he walks to the left, he suddenly disappears into thin air. None of the presenters seemed to notice, but viewers of the show were quick to take to social media to post clips of the incident, stating that they saw what they believed to be a ghost walking around on the field. But some viewers speculated that this may not have been live footage, and that stock footage may have been played while the discussion was going on instead. Others think that the man's sudden disappearance had something to do with the cameras used at the stadium, and that it may have simply been nothing more than a glitch. But this isn't the only strange event that was captured by the cameras that evening. As the panel continues to discuss the two teams, a man can be seen walking into view behind Neville, and in the footage, he seems to be carrying something that looks like a walking stick. Just moments later, he also disappears into thin air, causing further confusion among viewers who had just seen the first incident play out right before their eyes on a live television broadcast. Both incidents were discussed by fans for weeks afterward, and although many believe there is a plausible explanation, there are those who are certain that this football stadium is haunted. Internet users are usually pretty quick to dismiss videos that claim to show paranormal activity, which is understandable since there are literally thousands of faked videos all over social media platforms that can be easily debunked and proven as fake. But then there are some videos that just seem to defy explanation, as they seem to show something that either should not be possible, or that's so creepy that the reaction of the people appearing in the video seems completely genuine. A live stream that took place in 2016 has left internet users divided, since the footage seems to be completely real, and given that it occurred during a live stream, it would be very difficult to pull off, with many people watching the streamer's every move. The streamer in question is named Rubsy, and on this day, he was streaming from his friend's house since he was looking after the house and his friend's pets while they were out of town for the night. Rubsy decided to play the popular role-playing game Skyrim on his computer, and while doing so, he started a live stream during which he was chatting to his followers. But by the end of the stream, he was a nervous wreck as strange things started to happen around the house, and it was all captured live while he was experiencing it. In the footage, Rubsy can be seen sitting on a couch in his friend's living room, and he's talking about a character named Lydia when a door behind him inexplicably starts to open by itself while he continues to talk to his followers. But a few moments later, the door slams shut with a bang, and he jumps out of fright, clearly puzzled by what's going on. Some of his followers then message him to explain what they saw happening behind him, and while he's looking over his shoulder, a light switches on in another room without explanation. He decides to investigate, lifting a cat named Elvis off of his lap, and he then walks over to the room where the light inexplicably switched on. He switches the light off and walks back over to the computer, only to be told that it's switched itself on again. He laughs nervously and returns to the same room to switch the light off, but a few moments after he does so, the first door opens again, and this time he's right there to see it happen. He stops mid-stride, not knowing what to do, and he looks at the camera with a shrug, clearly baffled. But the strange activity doesn't end there. While looking into one of the rooms for an explanation, the first door slams shut again, and he jumps backward out of fright before slowly walking over to the door and shutting it. The next strange event seems to be the one that really gets under his skin. After returning to the live stream, he keeps an eye on his live stream and notices that a box has been placed on a table behind him that starts to shift around on its own. As he watches it in his camera feed, the box suddenly flies off the table at speed and crashes to the ground. This time, he's thoroughly frightened, and his followers are left in disbelief at what they just witnessed. From here on out, Rubsy's demeanor is completely different, as he realizes he's sitting in a house that seems to be haunted by a poltergeist. He returns to his game but is clearly struggling to concentrate, and a short while later, the activity starts up again. The same door can be seen opening despite Rubsy closing it securely just a while earlier. He doesn't notice at first and states that he's shivering all over before the door slams shut again. But this time, he tries to take it in stride and just closes his eyes out of exasperation. He turns around and asks, "Are you done?" referring to what he and his followers believe to be a poltergeist. He's undoubtedly unnerved by this point as he walks over to the same area to investigate, and this is when things get even stranger. As he reaches the far side of the room, the first door starts to rattle as if someone is frantically trying to open it from the other side. He opens the door and peers in, but when he finds that there's nothing there and that he can't explain what's happening, he turns to the camera and holds his arms up in disbelief. He has no choice but to return to the couch, but after a few minutes, something starts knocking at the door and his heart sinks once again. The box that fell off the table can be heard moving again, though he has moved it and it isn't captured on camera. While his followers discuss this, a strange shadow moves across the room behind him, and as he moves through the apartment with his phone camera in hand, another door slams, and one of the dining room chairs slides across the floor without explanation. This, it seems, is the last straw, and the footage ends as he finally decides to leave the apartment. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.